All right, everybody, welcome back to Roamer. Guys, today is the E-Revolution episode because we have been talking about EREVs for a while now, and the market can't get enough of this information. Every time we put a video out, or every time some other channel or publication puts out a video, there's a tremendous amount of attention and a tremendous amount of comments, likes, all of those things that we really appreciate. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, please.
Look for merch.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And we enjoy covering it because this is something we're really interested in, and we're glad you guys are. But we had a whole bunch of news drop in this space just in the last couple of days, and we thought it'd be great to just get together and talk about all the things that we've seen.
Yeah, we've got to do that, and we're calling it the E-Revolution, and we've got this really cool train sitting here in the graphic, and we'll talk about why that's there. But I just thought it was interesting. You said, we've had a lot of videos on this subject because it's really interesting to us. The reaction's really big. We're not the only publication doing that. Every time news drops on either one of these vehicles, there's tons of attention and firestorm of comments on Facebook groups and forums and in the YouTube comments. And we find out more and more details about how it's going to work and all this stuff. And yet, every time a new set of nuggets drop, there are always tons of comments from people that don't seem to understand how it's supposed to work at all.
Or why it even exists.
I mean, yeah, that's a whole other thing, right? Like, what's the need for this vehicle? And also, just saying plainly wrong things about the mechanical layout of the car and how these things are going to work together. So we thought, let's do a video on that. Let's talk about the new things we learned about both cars and, real world use cases, because we got a lot of details about that stuff this week.
We did. And so there's two vehicles that we know are coming to market. They're back here on the screen. Mm-hmm. We have the Scout Traveler and the Scout Terra pickup truck, not pictured. Brand new company, VW owned, but built, designed, engineered, all of that here in America. And it's going to be out, we're thinking late 2027. But people are really excited about that product. And then behind me, we obviously have the Ramcharger, okay? And this one's coming sooner rather than later. And we learned a lot about it this week. So Ram actually held a media webcast. They published a press release. They dropped a spec sheet. They threw about a bunch of new photos. And so we did learn quite a bit. I dropped a video the other night, complete with a little rant at the end. Sorry about that, folks.
Don't apologize at all.
But you and I haven't had a chance to sit down and really talk about all that info. Like, when you think about the Ramcharger and everything we learned, what jumps out to you about the truck that's really, really impressive?
Well, it's the towing capability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's clear that that has been a huge point of emphasis for them. We've kind of suspected that all along. They gave a really high towing capacity number when we first learned about it, 14,000 pounds. I mean, that's pushing you into 3/4 ton territory. And so they want you to be able to tow with this electric truck with range.
Whether you've charged the battery or not.
Right.
They've really spent a tremendous amount of time addressing that use case and pushing the envelope, because I think what they've effectively done is they've delivered something, or they're about to deliver something with so much capability that 99% of us out here who don't tow that kind of weight, we're going to have no reservations whatsoever.
No.
Whatsoever about power, whatsoever about power and range. Overall, just capability. I think this thing is going to live up to its promises. At least, when we watch the video and we see how they constructed the vehicle and how detailed they were willing to go into the different use cases and how they achieved their certifications and the different scenarios they put it through. It's really, really impressive. So, 14,000 pounds. The only other issue with this truck, though, is weight.
Yeah.
We don't know how heavy it is, actually.
Well, I mean, Ram is sending out press releases with spec sheets that say 7,500 pounds.
They are, but I think they messed up. I think they messed up in the spec sheet, and depending on which interview with which engineer, they're giving us two different ways to calculate and think about weight. I think it's closer to 6,000 pounds. And then I heard a podcast the other day where one of the engineers, now he's the propulsion guy, and he's very much focused on the motor. And somebody threw out this high number, and you could watch him. He just kind of did some back end calculations, and he said something about the gross combined vehicle weight with trailer being 22,000.
Right.
Okay, but in the webcast, another engineer, I heard him say it clear as day. He said 20,000 with a 14,000 pound trailer. So we don't know. And the way that they did it in the spec sheet in the press release looks incorrect. It's not how you calculate the total.
Yeah, it looks like they just took the two axle weight
Yes.
ratings and added them together, which, like you said, is not entirely correct. It's like adding up the corner load rating of all four tires and saying your car weighs that. That's not how it works.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that it matters.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we learned now, I say it doesn't matter, but there's been a couple of articles written. This is a big fat pig. It's crazy inefficient. It's actually not inefficient compared to other full size EV trucks. It's probably right where it needs to be. It's not Cybertruck territory, but it's definitely on par with the GM products
Yeah.
and a couple of others.
Well, and, running it on generator only, if you do the back of the napkin math and the kind of miles per gallon you would get running on just generator, it's right up there with a regular half-ton truck.
Yeah.
Even when they start doing all this stuff that everyone says they hate, like adding turbos and whatnot, the trucks really still aren't doing that much better than 20 miles per gallon on the highway under, very light driving conditions.
Right.
And this, we think, is going to get close to that. So,
Well, you bring up an interesting detail about that, because every time I see somebody in a forum talk about the efficiency and talk about that, 20 miles per gallon equivalent or whatever, somebody will chime in and go, well, hell, my diesel gets that.
great.
Oh, okay. If you're towing 500 plus miles every day, that's your normal use case, stick with your diesel.
Maybe.
But this truck, the benefit of this truck is that 95% of the time, you're going to be running on electricity. You should be.
You should be, but at the same time, like the things we learned this week from Ram, suggest that maybe you should, but also you don't have to in this vehicle, and you can still get really great towing specs and efficiency. So
In a half-ton pickup truck.
in a half-ton pickup truck, that's a little bit heavy, but also has great payload. We haven't talked about that, but yeah, I mean, look, charge it up every day, go tow 500 miles every day, and then, somebody else said in a forum today, they were kind of doing the math on how much savings there would be if you were to do 80% of your driving on pure EV and the rest kind of combined with the thing and doing their kilowatt hour, home charge costs and all this stuff. And I just really think that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. I don't think that's what is actually going to be attracting buyers to this truck. It's the actual experience of electrification using the truck. I can't wait to get behind the wheel of this, because I've towed a heavy trailer that was really pushing the complete limits of my LX all the way to Colorado. And that experience wasn't fun. And towing with a diesel truck, 14,000 pounds, yes, it can do it, but I think it's going to be a significantly different experience than this when you're dealing with actual purely electric power delivery. Mm-hmm. It's not just, it's a battery car that you've plugged in. The power delivery experience is going to be vastly different with no transmission between the engine and the wheels. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I actually really like the way you're coming at this because, Tim Kuniskis calls this the Goldilocks truck. And I think that's really what you're getting at is that you're kind of getting the best of all of it, right? It may not be perfect in certain areas, but you're getting a truck that is super smooth. It's going to be very quiet and refined. It'll do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. It's going to be quick when you want it to be quick. It can tow like a 3/4 ton pickup truck. It's going to have all the luxury that you want depending on the trim. Like it just is, and the payload, right? Over 2,600 pounds of payload.
Yeah.
Again, that's going to be class leading by a significant margin. And so you're just kind of getting, it's just checking every box.
Yeah.
It's meeting or exceeding its competition in almost every way. I mean, you're getting kind of this Ford Raptor like performance and you're getting a Super Duty towing experience, and you're getting a Ram interior, and you're getting class leading payloads. So I get what you're saying. Like we're kind of getting lost in the details, and arguing on the margins when the reality is we're getting all of it.
And you're getting a kick-ass workstation that goes with you wherever you need, right? I mean, because that's the other thing I love. They've really talked about from the very beginning the tradesman type trims, right? Or the work truck style trims. It's tradesman at Ram, right?
Right.
And the use case for those people using it every day is massive, right? Towing your trailer,
powering things
your
at the
work
workstation,
site, all that really cool stuff.
It's all there if you want it. Yeah, and the market is saying yes. We recognize that this is what we want, and they made a specific point during their webcast that never bevers, right? That the engineering team who know their market and they know the buying public very well as well. They encounter people just like we do on forums and everything else who say, I'll never buy a battery electric pickup truck. And they'll look at this and they'll go, I may not buy it, but you've got my attention, right? So they've turned a corner with people who were standing on the sideline of electrification, and now they're saying, oh, I'm actually interested in that. And so that's why all these manufacturers are doing it. That's why everybody is starting to invest and try to figure out how to make this type of technology work. The other thing we learned from Ram is the truck is coming in second half of this year. Everything continues to be a little later than we were told, right? Every single step, every single update we get is just a little bit further out. Although Kuniskis made the comment back to his engineers, the last time I drove this truck, it sure seemed like it was ready to me. And he kind of looked at him like, guys, let's go. I could sense his enthusiasm, and he's trying to push this thing and get it done and get it into people's hands. And I'm excited about it.
I am.
I need it tomorrow.
I know. Well, the reality is, we learned some other stuff from them that kind of makes these delays make sense a little bit, because, back when this first got announced, they said something that was really interesting. They said that the generator would be able to bypass charging, right? It would be able to put power on the high voltage bus and then send that directly to the EDMs, right? Bypassing the need to simply just charge the battery while the battery is then discharging to the EDMs, right? And they mentioned it in kind of a weird way. To me, it sounded like, kind of a party trick. If you really need a little extra power boost, you'll get it from the battery, and we'll send some generator power, and it'll go like extra fast or something. And then, not long after that, in an interview with TFL, the propulsion engineer made a comment when asked about like RPMs and how the generator would be running and how you would feel, like how the gas pedal would feel, right? Like under generator operation, that said, basically,
It's going to match your input.
Yeah, it's going to match your input, and you might, like, if you're pulling away under just generator power, you would, like, feel the engine kind of spin up some, as in you needed a little more power. And those two things were very strange to me at the time. Well, we found out why that is this week, because when Ram really started giving out details about how the generator is going to work, it became obvious that they are heavily relying on that generator's ability to power the EDMs directly in order to achieve all these goals and make the truck all things to all people.
Right.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of all that torque.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and the efficiency
In the electric motors. Right. The power from the generator to power the EDMs, which can generate a tremendous amount of torque at the wheels.
Yeah, and there's just efficiency gains there, right? Like
Yeah.
when you take power from the generator to charge the battery, there are losses, there are energy losses, and then when you take power out of the battery to go drive the EDMs, there are energy losses again. So they're kind of bypassing those two steps in order to, make this basic V6 able to give you this kind of 3/4 ton towing power, right?
Right.
Which, by the way, is also why we have this locomotive here. Because that is actually how pretty much every piece of freight in America moves across the country, right? And has been for, I don't know, like a century or something like that. That is, that's how these diesel locomotives work. They have
Diesel electric locomotives.
Yes, that's right. One big generator. There's no mechanical connection to any of the wheels that are driving the train. It's all send this generator power to electric motors that are right there on the wheels. So, cool stuff, and it kind of makes sense. Like, this guy is doing more heavy duty work than anything in the country, and now we're taking that style of powertrain and putting it in a half-ton pickup, and you can see you're getting some really cool results out of it.
Yeah, and they went into detail on diesels and turbos and Atkinson cycle and all of these things that they decided not to go with, and I thought they actually had some really good explanations for why that is, and why the 3.6 makes a tremendous amount of sense for this application. It's not so simple as, well, they had a warehouse full of them and they're cheap.
I still like that explanation.
I do too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. We learned some other things, that the frame is actually it's like 8 inches wider through the middle section of the truck, so than a normal 1500, which kind of it closes in as it moves to the back and then expands back out at the wheels. Not on this truck. There's an extra couple of inches of width on the frame rail. It's a very tall frame rail, so I want to say they said it was an 8-inch tall frame rail on the outside. I'd have to go back and listen again, but I thought that was quite remarkable. And it's a beefy truck, but it's really done so. They did that so that they could get everything packaged in the way they needed to. We got 8 lug wheels all the way around, so again, it's that heavy duty type setup,
yeah.
and it's not because the truck is so heavy. We've seen heavier trucks, heavier half-ton EV trucks that don't have 8 lug wheels on them. They said really has to do with the way the bearing assemblies and everything to handle that torque. Right. And said they almost just over-engineered the hell out of that assembly, and so you end up with 8 lug wheels. I think it kind of looks cool, personally, but. Yeah,
and that makes sense, and it makes sense with just the demands that are going to be like on the rear axles, right?
Yeah.
Like, in order to tow the 14,000 pounds they're talking about.
Yeah, and they have a DC to DC converter in the truck. It's solid state. They mentioned that. They said it was extremely efficient, like 95% efficiency to power all the direct current 12 volt stuff in the truck, whereas most setups like that is like down below 80% efficiency. So. I think that bodes well overall, just, making best use of energy.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was another kind of point of debate in comments was, so are we saying that there's not going to be a traditional 12 volt battery?
There is not.
Interesting, because...
No alternator, no 12 volt battery, no EGR system. Like it's pretty pared back.
Oh, no EGR.
No EGR, because they can pass emissions without it. So...
which I'm assuming that's got to have something to do with the generator loads, like not being the same as a traditional like ICE layout, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. But no alternate. I mean, lots of electric cars don't have alternators, but pretty much every other one I've seen has a traditional 12-volt battery, either AGM or lead acid or whatever, running the existing 12-volt architecture. So
It does make me wonder for the enthusiast crowd or the off-road crowd, like how do you power up your accessories? What does that look like? Do they power some, if you put a light bar on the truck or whatever, you would normally run that into, a block connected into the 12 volt. So
yeah,
what type of setup do they provide, for folks who want to do that sort of stuff, or do they not? That seem like that's kind of a miss.
that would be a huge miss. I got to believe there's some kind of bus bar or something
Right, there's gotta
that
be.
you can access under the hood
Yeah.
to access the 12-volt power.
I mean, we do know for onboard power, you already mentioned it earlier, we're getting 7.2 kilowatts. We're going to get a 240-volt outlet in the back. So glad to hear it. The only other Ramcharger we ever saw did not have that on board. The photos that we were shown, so it was kind of a base package, and it's nice to see the upgraded package as promised.
Yeah, can we pivot for a sec to the battery? And because we learned some
Oh, we did.
strange stuff about, I'm talking about like how it's going to maintain the battery,
Okay.
right? Under the different modes they discussed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think you said in the press release it wouldn't charge it past 50%.
Yeah. So once you go into e-save mode, so e-save mode, let's say you're cruising down the highway and you're at 70% battery, and you throw it over into e-save because you want power at camp. It's going to hold it at 70%. Let's say you're cruising down the highway and it's now down to 25% battery, and you throw it into e-save mode. The computer will actually take it up to 50% and hold it at 50%, but it won't go above that. And then the engineer made a comment later. Let's say you're out of camp and you turn the car on and it's just sitting there idling and not moving, and you'd run your battery down overnight. Now you want to throw it into e-save mode or to charge the battery. It will only go to 50. And so it's the way he spoke was as if there is no mode available that's going to take this thing all the way up on gasoline. And I wonder why they're doing that. I don't know if it's, they're. First of all, I was thinking about this a lot. I don't think there's a reason to do that, personally. I can't really think of a use case other than to prove that you can, where you'd really want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking practice, but there must be an engineering reason that they programmed it that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, in transit, it kind of makes sense because they talked about how, depending on your load, right? Are you towing or are you not?
Mhm.
Are you blasting 90 miles an hour down the freeway or 114 miles an hour, which is the top speed apparently? When you're doing that, and if you put it in an e-save and you're going to say kick on the generator, well, once you do that, almost all the generator power is going to be going directly to the wheels, bypassing the battery, right? And they've said like, well, when you're doing that, if there's extra power, because your power demands won't match the RPMs of the generator exactly all the time, they're like, well, we can put that power on the high voltage bus, and then whatever's left over, we can use that to charge the battery, right? So,
Right.
like, as you're going down the road, okay, that makes sense. We're not going to sit there, and we know the higher the state of charge on the battery, the more power it takes to get past
that
each
bingo.
incremental thing, right?
You have stumbled upon it.
Yeah. So that makes sense. In transit, it doesn't make as much sense to me if you're just
Stationary.
parked.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a safety thing because the engine's going to sit there and maybe it's not getting the kind of cooling they would want because you're not in motion. It's just idling
No.
for a really long time. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's something to know. I don't think it matters. I kept thinking, man, I'm talking about a huge battery. Okay, it's more energy than I'll ever use at camp in a 24-hour period. or a 48 or probably a 72-hour period. This thing's going to run. And okay, so I can, let's say on day 3, I need to run it. I can run it for a little while,
Yeah.
get it back up, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of the concerns about that and the people thinking about that use case and saying, well, I just want to sit there and let it charge all the way to 100%. It can't. I think part of those questions are coming from a little bit of fear of how the vehicle will drive with a depleted battery, with a low battery,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
And they want to have it charged up all the time, so they but the way the engineers are talking about it, like you said, you don't ever need to charge this thing. It can basically just run all the time and give you all the performance that they promised on the spec sheet with just putting gas in it. So that, like, why do you really need to charge it to 100% sitting at your campsite?
Well, somebody's going to go out there and try, and if we get one, we'll probably try it,
Right.
for you guys. So make sure you subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel. We did learn actually quite a bit about running this thing with no battery at all. So just off the generator. So you mentioned the 114 mile an hour top speed. They claim that you can run this thing flat out on just generator, out steady state on the highway at 114 miles per hour until it runs out of gas, I guess. That was what they alluded to. So that does tell you, okay, if you can do that at 114 steady state, if you're cruising along the highway at 75, you're going to be putting a decent amount of energy back into the battery if you want to be in that mode. So definitely has that capability. It's not just going to be trickle charging. They need to put a decent amount back into it. We learned about towing on an empty battery. So on just generator alone, this thing evidently passed the Davis Dam test. So that is 3,000 feet elevation gain or an 11-mile route up to this road above 100 degrees, pulling a 14,000-pound trailer, maintaining at least 40 miles per hour up the grade. That's the test. And they claim they did it without any juice in the battery. They just fired up the generator and off they went.
Yeah. Not a dead battery, but a depleted battery.
A depleted battery.
Yes.
Batteries
say
don't
dead.
die.
No, we don't.
Okay.
No, I felt the engineer's pain when he said that. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And look, I mean, 45 miles an hour, like I said, my experience towing a heavy camper up over the pass between Durango and Silverton was, I mean, I couldn't reach 45.
Right.
I had to sit there in second gear and go 30 miles an hour up some of those, which are not nearly as extreme as the grades they do on the Davis Dam test. So that's pretty impressive.
Oh, and the air conditioner.
14,000 pounds.
The air conditioner has to be on
yes.
max.
Yeah,
That's
of
another
course.
part of
Naturally.
the SAE test.
This is
So,
America, isn't it?
It's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Crank the AC, and you can do this. Now you say, well, I don't want to do 40 miles an hour up that pass or the Eisenhower Pass or whatever. That's where tow mode comes in. Because tow mode maintains a minimum of 35% in the battery as you're running along. So, it's saying, hey, I'm going to be a little bit more less efficient while you're towing to Colorado, all right? And I'm going to make sure that this battery maintains its 35% level along the way. And so when you do get to that pass, you've got extra power on board. In fact, they called out the Eisenhower Tunnel in Colorado specifically. They said we started out at the base, we had the 35%, we ran up to the top of the pass to the tunnel, and we drained that battery way down in the process, but we were able to maintain pace of traffic. By the time they got to the other side, down at the bottom, what's the name of that town? Dillon in Frisco, the battery was at 37%. So it had charged back up with the regenerative braking and everything else. So, again, they seem to have thought of everything. They seem to have put, a lot of thought into towing, and they want this to be a very successful platform in that regard. So, now, on the flip side of the coin, the vehicle that we're kind of psychotic about, okay, is the Scout. The Scout, Traveler, and Terra, specifically the Harvester. Well, that made its driving debut this week with Jay Leno.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Scott
Oh,
Kiowa
boy.
went on his show, and let Jay drive it. And man, did that kick off a firestorm.
Yeah, boy, it sure did. And I really felt for Scott sitting in that car because you could tell. I think, you know, any other media outlet they take that car to, and they ask them if they can drive it, they're going to be like, look, no, sorry, it's pre-production. It doesn't have a
Right.
full propulsion unit. It's not finalized or anything. It's going to be real noisy. And that'll be the end of it. But when Jay Leno wants you to come
Yeah.
bring it in his garage, say, oh, bring this guy into my garage.
It's
Yeah.
like he started doing his Jay Leno. This is a good Jay Leno. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Like, you know, it's like, well, I want to drive the car. Okay. You're going to let him drive the car. He's Jay
Gotta
Leno.
let
He's
Jay
the
drive
biggest
it.
car guy on the planet. And, you know, and so they were like, okay. And then Jay took it like out on an airfield,
Taxiways.
a taxiway, and was like, I don't know, I think he had it like pegged or something. Well, as Jamie with Scout Motors was frantically trying to point out in the YouTube comments and on the Scout forums that, hey, the motor in those vehicles is basically just big enough to get it
a
on and
mouse
off a
trap.
trailer.
It's a
That's
mousetrap.
it. Yeah, and so to get it to move those things, it's like got a ton of gear reduction. So it's basically like running a car in reverse all the time, right? You get that gear whine,
Right.
Because the little gear is spinning so fast, and it was just you could barely hear them talk to each other, and I could tell Scott was just like the whole time.
He's trying to overcome it and fight through it and talk about everything except for, you know, that high pitched whine that was going on. And Jay even commented on it and he said, look, it's pre-production. It's not going to sound like that.
Yeah.
It's not even pre-production. It's not even the right way to
No.
talk about it. It's literally a show car. And you have to have something in there to, like you said, get it from over there to over here.
Yeah.
So you're not pushing them up on
Yeah.
these displays and everything.
And Jay, you know, he's the ultimate car guy. He understands this completely. And so when you say to him, oh, it's a prototype, it's got this small power unit in it, whatever, that's the end of it for Jay. He's like, oh, he doesn't
Right.
think about it
Well, yeah,
again.
exactly.
But he doesn't realize that there's this corporation here that has to manage how people are reacting to their car, and the comments are going to be flooded with people who like, you know, come in after Jay said that, and they're like, "What's going on with this electric motor? Oh my God, it's so loud. EVs are dumb." I saw that one. I'm not kidding. You just be like, "Oh my God, EVs awful. Who could stand to be in a car that loud?" No. Anyway, like I say, it doesn't really matter. It's a pre-production car or a prototype, right?
Yeah.
But it was just kind of funny to see all that go. I hope nobody at Scout lost any sleep over it because.
But they did lose sleep probably over another thing that popped up in the video, and that's the tow rating. We just spent half an hour talking about towing capability of the
Yeah.
Ramcharger, and all of a sudden on the show, Scott, you know, is asked about towing capability for the Harvester. Okay, because that's where they spend 90% of their time. 'Cause that's what people are interested in. The EREV version of the Scout. 5,000 pounds is what he said. He said 5,000 pounds for both vehicles
Both.
with the Harvester extended range generator.
Yeah, and that was everyone flipped out because the regular Traveler, the SUV, they've said it's going to be like 7,000 pounds. So it dropped to 5,000. Look, you've added the weight of the generator. It's over the rear axle. You can kind of understand, okay, we're going to have to take some rating off of the towing capacity. But the Terra, the truck, was rated at 10,000 pounds. And so if you're like, well, we might have to drop to 7,500 or 8,000 pounds, and then you find out, no, it's 5,000, people flipped out. But I think we need to tap the brakes
We need to
on
chill.
the meltdown.
We do. I don't know how much we need to chill about it.
Well, and neither does Scout from the sounds of it. I think, yeah. I don't want to say Scott like spoke out of turn. I think he just
He runs the company.
He does run the company. He's the CEO.
Yeah.
What he says goes, I guess. But like, I think he just, as things sit, they're not comfortable listening or testing with it or committing to something higher than that. But look, we know the actual generator specs aren't finalized. Nothing is finalized. The final actual drive unit, E-beam axle isn't finalized. So let's just all chill out.
You wanna go there
And go where?
on the beam axle?
Oh, what? What about it?
Well,
It's
you have
coming.
independently sourced some news on the
That's
E-beam.
true. I have, yeah.
That nobody else, this would be the first time anybody has said this in a video.
It would be. Yeah. So
Because, hang on, we speculated, and we told you in a previous video, that we believed this axle was going to be a Dana axle.
we did. I think we had thought we had heard it was going to be a legacy
Yes.
manufacturer that has done stuff for Scout way
Yeah.
back in the day. We had heard Dana had won an RFQ
A couple of years ago.
couple of years ago relating to some electrification. We thought that would be super cool. It's not going to be Dana. I can say that with confidence. That information is not coming from Scout. So take that for what? I don't know. You can guess. It's not Scout, so it's
Okay.
not Dana. But yeah, so a little birdie told me no, Dana did not win that bid for Scout. They did bid on it, but it was won by American Axle Manufacturing, which is a large company that is mostly, Dana does a lot of aftermarket, a lot of heavy duty. They do supply OE axles, but also you can buy their stuff and build your own,
Right.
like Edison motor giant truck if you want with all Dana driveline stuff. American Axle Manufacturing is kind of more in the OE space,
Right.
So
And
this
not
is
just
more-
axles. They do
Yeah.
everything. They do stabilizer bars and sway bars and you name it for suspension
Right.
and heavy. A ton of different things in the OE space.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
they make good quality stuff.
for sure, it would have been fun to say, oh, it's got Dana's, like
Yeah.
a Jeep's got Dana's here and there, 44s or whatever on the Rubicons. But a quality axle.
Very quality.
Yeah,
A ton of experience in the EV space with
Right.
these axles already.
Yeah.
So EVs that you have heard of. So if you want to go out and Google that and see who else has been using them for the last 5, 6, 7 years, even, go check that out. So, looking forward to hearing official word. We think we're going to hear it pretty soon, officially on the axles. I think it may be a little bit longer from what we're hearing to be notified of what the actual generator is going to be. But, beyond all of that, Jay did get to drive the vehicle. They spent a lot of time talking about the design ethos and things we've covered ad nauseum here. I could tell Scott was really, really proud of the roof and the cabana style roof. And
I don't think he got the response from Jay he was looking for.
No, Jay didn't care.
No.
But steel roof, glass roof, cabana style roof, all confirmed. At least here for the Traveler, we continue to hear we're going to get all three options
Yeah.
on the Terra. So,
Jay owns a Stanley steamer. Your cabana roof, I guess, it just doesn't move the needle for him. I don't think that much, and I guess that's fair. You have literal rocket motorcycles, and you have steam-powered cars in your garage.
the man wears goggles when he's on them. So, right?
Yeah.
But all in all, he was very enthusiastic about what they were trying to do, and he was very quick to see that this isn't a pretend vehicle. They didn't just slap a badge on a VW Atlas and electrify it.
Yeah.
And dude, they went ground up for the goods, man. This thing's really built to go do some crazy, incredible things. But yeah, I mean that's it for the two vehicles. I can't think of anything else that we haven't talked about that we need to talk about. I think by and large, people are finally starting to figure out what the heck this is. There's still plenty of people out there who love EVs. They're sort of EV fanatics, and they think this is the dumbest, most efficient thing you could possibly do. And my point the other night was, well, what's the alternative? Because the people that you're trying to convince are out here driving diesel pickup trucks, 3/4 ton pickup trucks. They drive them every day. Okay, so do you want them to continue doing that, or do you want to give them something that can replace it and replace it with an electrified platform? What do you want? We're not all going to drive Model 3s and Model Ys around. That's just not reality.
No, it's not reality, and I've tried to make that point several times to the dyed-in-the-wool EV people. It doesn't seem to get through very well, but the reality is they see this as inhibiting the road to electrification. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. There's just more charging, and the EVs are fine, and solid-state batteries are gonna fix everything. And I'm just telling you, that's just not the case. Like, this kind of powertrain is going to electrify way more miles of, America's total miles driven, right? Everybody that has to use a vehicle, you're going to electrify way more of those miles, way faster with this kind of approach. And expanding the charging network is not really going to give you the accelerated timeline you think it does.
Yeah, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot
Yeah.
by fighting it.
Right.
You need this technology in the light and medium heavy duty space. There's a reason there's not charging stations every 200 miles on a rail line. And they just stop,
Right.
pull over, plug in a Tesla supercharger, and then keep going. No, they're carrying a hell of a lot of fuel with them to
Right.
pull a lot for long haul. So, all right, I think that's it. I'm sure we're gonna get loaded up with all kinds of fun comments again. Bring it, man. We absolutely love it. We love talking about this stuff, and it's really, really exciting. It feels like we're finally getting all the information, or a lot of the information we've been clamoring for, and I think we're just going to keep getting more and more here over the next couple weeks. So the commitment we made to you guys is when it drops, we're going to jump in and we're going to do our best to cover it. Did that the other night. He was nowhere to be found, but he's here tonight, so thanks for showing up.
Sure.
Yeah, and end it the only way you know how, with your dumb, stupid, awkward way. You gonna do
If
it?
you're going to call it, no, not if you're going to call it
All right,
stupid.
well,